Today we'll start with the programming part. So far we understood about what are the different roles for an ABAP consultant related to this SAP HANA environment. Now let us log on to the system. So here, in order to work with the HANA database, we require what? HANA Studio. Okay, we require HANA Studio. This HANA Studio, it is configured on top of what? Eclipse. So basically HANA Studio is a Eclipse tool. In that Eclipse tool we need to add in the plugins related to what? HANA. Then we call it as what? HANA Studio. Okay, so first of all let us see how to log on to the HANA Studio. One second, I'm just connecting to the server. Just hold on please. Right. So on the desktop, I'm having icon SAP HANA Studio. Let me open this. I'll double click on this SAP HANA Studio. So HANA Studio is basically an Eclipse. So you can see while opening this HANA Studio, it is going to load the libraries related to what? Eclipse. Done. Okay, so right. So first, what we are going to initially is we are going to discuss what native HANA development. Okay, initially we'll start with what? Native HANA development. So after completing some part of native HANA development, we'll go for what? Other things. Okay, like ABAP and HANA development thing. Right. So in native HANA development, we require what? We need to open this HANA Studio related to a development perspective. So in the HANA Studio, you can see already in the last class I told, okay, we can use this what tool to develop what different types of objects related to what different types of languages. So here you can see once you open the HANA Studio, we have a menu window, okay, menu window, perspective, okay, window, perspective, open perspective, other. So what is a perspective? Each perspective will have its own look and feel, or I can say each perspective is a view. So if I am a what administrator, I'll open that in what? Admin perspective. If I am a developer, I'll open that in what? Development perspective. If I am a BW consultant, I may open that in what? BW perspective. Okay, so now I want to open it in what? ABAP HANA development perspective. Okay, so perspective, open perspective, other. I'll go to other. So you can see we have different types of perspective here. I am interested in what? SAP HANA development. So why I am opening in SAP HANA development environment? Because I want to do the native HANA development. So I'll choose this SAP HANA development. Say okay. Yeah, already we are in what? HANA development. So in HANA development, basically you'll have some three tabs here. Okay, we have three tabs: Project Explorer, repositories, and what? Systems. Okay, one second please, one second. Yeah, right. So this is your three tabs here: Project Explorer, repositories, and what? Systems. Right. Now here first what we need to do is we need to configure the system. I repeat once again, we are trying to discuss what? Native HANA development. So the first and foremost thing you have to do is we have to open that in what? HANA development perspective. HANA development perspective. So how do we switch this perspective? by choosing the menu window, perspective, and what open perspective other. And in this we have what different types of perspective. So I opened what ANA development perspective, in which we'll have what three tabs. Done. So first and foremost thing you have to do is in the systems menu, in the systems tab, I need to configure the system. Okay, I need to configure the system. So how do we configure the system means configuring the system means agenda is what I have to do the native ANA development. So native ANA development means what last class we discussed. We are trying to directly create the objects related to what ANA database. Directly we can create the database objects related to what ANA. Okay, so for that we need to configure the system. Configuring the system means we need to provide the host name, we need to provide the instance number, okay, description, all those things. So already you can see in the systems tab, we have one system configured here called as what HDB. Already the system is configured. If it is not configured, what you have to do is you'll right click on this and you'll say what add a system. Okay, so when you say add system, you can see here it is asking you what host name. Okay, nothing but application server name. Then we have what instance number. That's it. Just say what finish. Okay, so since the system is already configured, what I need to do is I need to just connect to that particular database. Okay, what is the instance, what is the system configured HTTP. So in order to connect to this database, okay, in order to connect to this database, I'll right click on this and I'll say what log on. Okay, I'm trying to connect to my database. Right click on the system configured, log on. It is asking the user ID and what password. Online, please mute your speakers. Once you log in, please mute your speakers. Okay, right. So it is asking for the user ID and password. So let me give the user ID is Anna here. Okay, you can see enter the password of what SAP HANA database user. So whatever the user we are trying to connect, it is a database user, not the user related to application server. Here we are directly going to talk to what database. So I'll give the password, required password, right? I give the password, say okay. Done, it is connected. Okay, so once it is successfully connected, you can see here we have different folders here like catalog, content, provisioning, and security. So in the next 4 5 days we'll be discussing all these things, what exactly each one represents here. Yeah, first and foremost thing is catalog. Okay, in this catalog only, okay, in this catalog only you'll have what all the objects related to your database. So if I open this catalog, you can see here there are different schema is available here. There are different schemas available. Schema means what? Nothing but it is a collection of what database objects, or you can understand like this. If you take our ABAP environment, if you want to develop any objects, first of all you'll create a package. So what is a package there? A package is a container of what? It can be a container of repository and what dictionary objects. Here you can assume schema is a container of what? Database objects. It is a logical grouping of what? Database objects. So when I say database objects, we have many database objects. We have what? Tables, we have views, synonyms, sequence, procedures, indexes, all those things comes under what? Database objects. So what is the user we have logged in here? ANA user. On behalf of the logged in user, on behalf of the logged in user, one default schema will be created. Okay, you can observe here one default schema will be created. What is the username here? Anna. So the default schema name is also what? Anna. Am I clear? I repeat once again. On behalf of the logged in user, one default schema will be available with the same name. So what is this here? Anna. So I don't want to use these schemas for the timing, and you can see here there are some predefined schemas. There are some system defined schemas starting with what? Underscore sys. So what exactly each schema contains, again it takes some 3 4 days to understand these schemas. anything starting with underscore sys, you have to understand that as what system defined schemas. System defined schemas. Just like if you take our SAP environment, if you talk about ABAP, okay, in our SAP system, you'll have what predefined packages. Similarly, you'll have what system defined schemas. What exactly each schema contains, you will discuss that going forward. So as of now, I'm not bothered about the system defined schemas. I want to create what my own schema. So why I want to create my own schema? I'm going to create some database objects. All those database objects I want to store in my own schema. Okay. So let us see first of all how to create a schema. Schema is nothing but what? Container of database objects. It is a logical grouping of database objects. So what I'll do is first see here. Okay, so under catalog, all the development you'll do under what? Catalog. So under catalog, I want to create a schema. So for that, you need to write one SQL statement. Okay, I need to write some SQL statement. So for that, I need to open the SQL console. You need to open the SQL console. So how do we open the SQL console? You can right click on the catalog and say what? Open SQL console, or you can see there is one icon here, open SQL console for the selected system. I can right click and open, or you can directly click on this icon. So I'll keep the focus on the catalog. I'm trying to open the SQL console. So right hand side you can see it has opened the SQL console. So in this SQL console only we'll write all the SQL script programming. Okay, we'll write all the SQL statements. Okay, so first of all I want to create a schema. So for creating the schema, there is no UI available. We need to write the statement manually. Okay, so there are some database objects. Okay, there are some database objects which we can create manually or by using what wizard kind of thing. I mean to say UI. But for creating schema, we have to use only the SQL statement called as what create schema. So before I go to this, so what is this SQL here? SQL stands for what? A structured query language, or we also call it as what standard query language. So this SQL, okay, I can divide into what? This SQL I can divide into different things. We have DDL, data definition language. Okay, we have DML, data manipulation language. Okay, we have DCL, data control language, and I can say we have what? TCL, transaction control language. So SQL is a standard language used for interacting with what? HANA database. It is a standardized language. Okay, so this SQL statements I can classify into what? Different things like DDL, data definition language. Then we have what? Data manipulation language. Okay, then we have DCL, data control language. And then we have what? Transaction control language. Okay, transaction control language. So I repeat once again, this SQL is a standard language used for communicating with the HANA database. These SQL statements we can classify into what? Subcategories like DDL, DML, DCL, and what? TCL. So coming to this DDL, we have different statements like we have create, okay, we have alter, okay, we have drop, we have what? Rename, okay. And coming to this DML, we have select, we have insert, update. Okay, select, insert, update, and then we have what? Delete. And coming to this DCL, data what? Control language, we have what? Grant, and we have what? Revoke. Grant and what? Revoke. Coming to this TCL, we have what? Commit, a rollback, and we have something called as what? Save point. So this is the sub classification for what? SQL. Okay, SQL is a standard language used for interacting with what? HANA database. Interacting with the HANA database. Okay, right. And we have what subcategories in this, like DDL, DML, DCL, and what? TCL. Right. So what is my requirement here? Before I start using these objects, I want to create my own schema so that in the next 4 5 days, whatever the database objects I'm going to create, I'll group them under my own schema. Okay, there are some predefined schemas also. So what we have to do for issuing the executing the SQL statements, we have to open the SQL console. I right click on the catalog and I said open SQL console. Done. Now I need to create the schema. Okay, so I'll give create schema. Okay, create schema. I'll give the schema name. Okay, you can give any name. Let me give the schema name as something, what, a gensoft SQL something. Okay, so I'm creating the schema name as what, gensoft SQL. And every SQL statement you have to end it with what, semicolon, just like in our ABAP. Above we use period to indicate the end of the statement. Here we use what, semicolon. Okay, and you can observe here I am trying to use double quotes here. Double quotes is not mandatory, but as a practice you start using these double quotes. What is the advantage? You'll understand that going forward. Okay, create schema gensoft SQL. I want to execute this particular statement. Okay, so how do we execute here? As of now, my SQL console contains only one statement. I can directly press what? F8. You can see a right hand side corner. We have an execute button icon. I can click on this or just press F8. Okay, if you have multiple statements in this SQL console, whichever statement you want to execute, you need to what, select that particular statement and say what, F8. Otherwise what happens, it will try to execute all the statements which are available in this SQL console. So as of now we have only one statement. It doesn't matter whether we select or don't select. So I'm just selecting this. Okay, I'll press F8. So schema gets what, created. Done. It is executing. You can see the right hand side corner, HTTP SQL console gensoft SQL. First time this will take time. Once I don't take anything, everything I'll document clearly and I'll send it by afternoon every day. Right, so I'm trying to create the schema. You can observe here, statement create schema is successfully executed in what, so and so seconds. Okay, done. So you can see in the catalog section, we should have a schema with what name, gensoft SQL. Okay, so as of now it is not showing me. I need to refresh. How to refresh? Just right click on the catalog and say what, refresh. So when I refresh, yes, you can observe now we have one schema. Okay, now if I expand my schema here, you can observe. Okay, we have different types of what, we have different types of database objects. All these things are called as what, database objects. Okay, column views, EPM models, all these things. Okay, so we'll discuss each one of them elaborately. Right, so first of all let us go for what, table. Why only for tables initially? If you take any database, the purpose of database is what, to store the data permanently. Where do we store the data permanently? As part of a table. So let me try to create a table. Okay, I'm trying to create a table. So here I can directly write the statement here, or I can create the table. Okay, I can create the table by using what, this wizard. By using the wizard I can create the table. Right click on the table and I can say new table. So I don't want to do it by using UI as of now. Let me create the table. So what I'll do is, let me what, type different types of ways to create the table. So as we know, HANA database supports both row store as well as what, column store. At this stage, again, we don't know what exactly is the meaning of row store and what, column store. Okay, I'll try to cover that in the next 1 or 2 sessions. Okay, let me create the table. I want to create a column table. I want to create a column table. Let's see how to create. Or let me just create a normal table first. Let us see what happens. Create table. Try to understand. Create table. I'll give the table name Acha. Now when I'm creating the table, this table is nothing but what, one of the database object. This database object should be created as part of which schema, Gensoft SQL. Okay, we need to create it as part of what? Gensoft SQL. So what I need to do is I need to prefix my database object with the schema name. So I'll say create table, what? Gensoft SQL. Okay, dot. Okay, provide the table name. I'll give the table name as something what? emp1, some table name. Okay, create table gensoft SQL dot emp1. Okay, I can type it in the same line. Let me just to increase the readability, I'll put it in the next line. Okay, then I'll give the what? Column name. Let me give it as empid. Okay, int. Okay, empid int. And then I'll say what? Ename varchar of what? 20. Done. Let me close the table. So this is the table I created. Create table gensoft SQL dot emp1. Okay, so this is my table name, which is prefixed with what? Schema name. So every database object that you create has to be prefixed with what? Schema name. If I create 100 database objects, every time do I need to create the, you need to prefix the schema name? Not necessary. Going forward, I'll cover a statement called what? Set schema. So when you set the schema, that schema is will be available for the entire session. It will be available for the entire session, so that every time you need not prefix your object with what? Schema name. So at this stage we don't know anything about that statement. I'm trying to create a table. And one more point, I'm creating the table, but I'm not instructing the database whether it is a row store table or what? Column store table. And one more thing you have to focus here is I'm creating the table without any constraints. Without any constraints. Again, this is very important. So we have different types of constraints like primary key constraint, unique constraint, foreign key constraint, not null constraint. Okay, so I'm not specifying any constraint. So let us see what happens. So I'm creating the table. Done. So since I'm having multiple statements here, I want to execute only this statement. So I'm just selecting that statement and press what? F8. Right? So you can observe now it is successfully what? The statement so and so is what? What? Created successfully. Created successfully. Done. So let me open that. See here, this is my table. If I expand my tables database object here, done. So you can observe here in which schema under Gensoft SQL we have one table called as what? EMP1. Okay, and you can see here I have not specified whether it is a row store table or what? Column store table. So you can see in the left hand side icon, it is showing in what? This particular icon. Before that, let me just right click on my table. Right click on the table. I'll say open definition. When I open the definition here, you can observe now. You can observe what is the table name? EMP1. What is the schema? Gensoft scale. What is the type here? Row store. So every database that we know so far, Oracle, MS Access, all those things, it supports. They support only what? Row store. But whereas ANA supports both row store and what? Column store. If you don't specify whether it is row store or column store, by default it is created as what? Row store. And you can see here while creating the table fields, while creating the table columns, I have not specified any constraints. Like I have not specified any primary key constraint or not null constraint. So nothing got created here. No constraints are available on this particular table. So this is one of the way to create the table. So it is created as what table? Row store table. Okay, so this is row store. By default it is what? Row store. Okay, so before I continue further, any questions on this part or this part, please ask me. No, right? Yeah, Samir, I'll come to that points. Okay, so just like in ABAP, we have different types of data types. Okay, we have different types of data types like integer, okay, float, okay, all those things. Similarly, here also in this SQL also we have different types of database. Okay, sorry, data types. One of the database what varchar. Whether you want to deal with characters in our ABAP environment, we'll go for what char. Okay, whereas here we use what varchar. So varchar is one of the data type name. Yes, Sudhakar. In our ABAP environment, primary key is mandatory. If you go to SC11, I cannot create a table without any what primary key. It is mandatory to create minimum one primary key and maximum what 16 primary key fields. But whereas in ANA, not only ANA, in other database also, I can create a table without any primary key. So that's what I want to highlight here. I have not created the table with any primary key. No primary key is available. So it's not in other database also. In other database also, it is possible to create the table without what primary keys. Okay, and Vamshi, what is the name? Namespace is not required. Starting with, yeah, here since we are from ABAP background, generally whenever we create any objects we start with what ZRY. Here it is not mandatory, but still if you want to follow that we can follow. No, no, that is ABAP. Forget about that ABAP table creation. We don't have data class, size category, those concepts here. We are directly talking with the database here. So we don't, this is a simple statement to create the table. And namespace is required. As of now, namespace is required. So Venkat, here we don't have any concept like technical settings. Just I'm using one SQL statement create. By using that create, I can create the table. This table will directly go and sit in the database table. Can we access SAP database tables? Yes, we can. Okay, when we go to ADBC, I'll cover that, Surendra. Done. Okay. Right. So I created the table. By default, it is what row store. Now let me create the table in another way. Online, please mute your speakers. If you don't have questions, please mute your speakers. Yes, online, please mute your speakers. I'm getting a voice. MK. Yes, who is this person logged in by name MK? Hello? Hello?
Hello.
Yeah, who is this?
Yeah, this is Kamlesh. Actually, I have muted my speaker.
Yeah, please mute your speakers, no, Kamlesh. Yeah, done. Still I'm getting the voice from someone. I don't know who is that. Please mute your speakers. Right, let me create another table here. Create column table. Okay, create column table. I'll give the same fields empid, int, ename, varchar2. So just try to understand. Earlier, yeah, earlier when I'm not specifying whether it is row store or column store, by default it is what row store. Now I'm trying to create another table. What is the table name I'm giving here? EMP1, but the change I have done is column table. So let's see whether it will create the table or not. Okay, so just select this. I'm selecting this. What is the only change? I have used addition what column. So let me just select this, right? Then here I'll press what F8. So when I press F8, done. I got an error. So you can see here cannot use what duplicate table name, cannot use duplicate table name. So even though it is a different type of table, even though it is a column store table, it is not allowing me to create a table with the same name. So let me just change it, emp2, done. Let me execute this again. I'll select this, I'll press what, f8. When I press f8, it is trying to execute that. So this is another table, what, emp2, create column table gensoft sql.emp2. It is still executing. I think I can refresh here, but let me try. Okay, let me right click on the schema and I'll say refresh. One second, please. Vamshi, are you talking? One second. Yeah. So what happened here? The table got created. Let me open the table. So if I expand the tables, this thing, I'm in two tables. Now what is this EMP2? Let me open the definition. Let me close this instance. Yeah, let me open the definition. How do you open? Right click on the table and say what? Open definition. So you can see here a table is created. What type of table it is? Column store. Here also you can see I don't have any primary key and what, not null constraint. Done. So for column store also it is possible to create the table without any primary key concept. Done. Let me create another table. So just see the change. Create column table gensoft sql.emp3. Try to understand emp3, and then here I'll say empid int. I'll try to use a constraint called as not null. Okay, so what is the change I did? I'm trying to create another what, table called as what, emp3, but the only change I have done is what, I am adding a constraint called as what, not null constraint. So let's see whether we can create the table or not. Okay, so when I say f8, done, the table got created. You can see now the table is successfully created, emp3. Let me open the definition, or let me refresh first. Right click on the tables and say refresh. Then it is refreshed. Let me open the definition of this emp3. Right click and also open definition. Good. So you can observe here, for this emp3 we have two columns here, employee id and employee name. And for employee id you can see in one of the column not null, x mark is set here, which indicates what, this emp id is what, is having what, not null constraint. Very shortly we'll understand what is this not null constraint. Done. Okay, let me just quickly copy this. Done. So what is the change I have done? I have added what? Not null constraint. Now what I'll do is, in this EMP3, as of now, I don't have what data. I don't have data, so I'll right click on the EMP3. I'll try to open the data. Right click on the table, say open content. Done. There is no data available. Fine. Sorry. Now I want to insert the what? Data. So how do I insert here? Just observe. Insert into what? What is the schema name? Gensoft SQL. Okay, insert into Gensoft SQL dot, to which table I want to insert? EMP3 values. I'll give the employee number as what? 1, and employee name I'll give it as something what? Raju. Done. Let me insert these three records. Done. So I've inserted what? Three records. Let me execute this three statement. I'll say fit. Done. Duration of, so you can see here, rows affected is what? 1. Oh, why 1? Not 1. You can see 1 by 1. So you can observe this. This is the first record, 1 Raju, rows affected is 1. This is 2 Ravi, rows affected is 1. And this is 3 Ravi, rows affected is what? 1. Let me open the table. Open the data of the table. Right click on the table and say open content. Yes, we have what? 3 records. So successfully I am able to insert what? These 3 records. Now the change I'll do is, I have inserted 3 records. Done. Now the changes. Okay. Insert into Gensoft SQL.emp3. I don't want to provide the data for. I don't want to provide the data for both the fields. So I'll say here, I want to provide only for what? Employee ID. So I'll say employee ID. Okay. Insert into so and so employee ID. Let me remove the double quotes and check employee ID, and I'll say values. Let me give this as what? Something what? 4. That. So what is the change I did here? Earlier my table was having two columns. While inserting the data, I am providing the data for both the columns. Now I want to provide the data only for one of the column, what? EMP ID. Let me check whether it is successfully executed or not. So I'll just select that statement and I'll press F8. Rows affected is what? 1. Okay, employee ID affected is 1. Let me go and check the table. Okay, let me just close this, right click on this and say what? Open content. Done. Okay, so you can see employee ID is 4, employee name is what? Null. Question mark indicates what? Null. Done. Now the change I'll do is, so this is valid. Let me just copy this. Okay, this is valid. Now I'll do reverse in the sense, insert into Gensoft SQL.emp3. I'll provide the data for what? The other column. What is the other column? Employee name. Employee name values. I'll say something what? Ramesh. I'll say Ramesh. Let me try to execute this. I'll just select this. Okay. I'll say fit. Good. So what is the error I got here? Cannot insert null or update to what? Null. So what is saying is, I, while creating the table employee ID, I gave what constraint? Not null constraint. Not null constraint means it cannot have blank value. It cannot have null value. So when I'm not providing the value for employee ID, it is not allowing me to what? Create that particular record. So let me just copy this for your reference so that at the time of practicing you can do the same thing. Done. So this is giving me what? An error. What error? I'll document it later on. So I'm unable to insert. Now what I'll do? Hope it's clear to everyone. So not null means what? I cannot keep it what? Blank. I cannot keep it blank. It cannot have null value. Now I'll do one more change. What I'll do? Okay, before that, let me open the table once again. Right click on the table, say open content. We have how many records? 4 records. 1, 2, 3, 4. I'll try to insert a record with employee number what? 2. Okay, I'll try to insert a record with employee number what 2. So what I'll do here, I'll say insert into so and so employee 3 values 2. I'll just change the name. I'll change it to something what Srinivas. I'm changing it to what Srinivas. Okay, so what is the change I'm trying to do? I'm trying to provide duplicate value for what employee number. Okay, let's see whether it's supported or not. So when I say fit rows affected is what 1. Let me go there and refresh. When I refresh here, what happened? 2 Srinivas got inserted. So what is the meaning? Not null can accept duplicate values. Not null can accept duplicate values, but not null values. Means I cannot keep what? Blank value. So again, this is what? This is again what? Valid. So not null means it can have what? Duplicate values. Now I'll do a small change. Just observe here. Let me complete this, then you can ask the questions if you have any. I'm creating another table. Let me give the table name as EMP4. Now the change I'll do is I'll give it as what primary key. I'll give it as what primary key. So I'm creating one more table with the primary key constraint on which column? Employee ID. Let me select this. I'll press F8. Okay, done. So the table is what? Successfully created. So if I refresh my tables database object, yes, one more table got created, EMP4. Okay, EMP4. Let me just open the UI, right click on this and also open definition. So you can see now for employee ID, you can see key selected as well as what? Not null. So what I can say is primary key constraint is a combination of unique constraint and not null constraint. Primary key constraint is a combination of unique constraint and not null constraint. So to understand that, right, so I created the table. Let me just copy this for your reference. Done. So what I did here, I created one primary key constraint. Let me insert some data into that. Insert into so and so. What is the table name? EMP4, EMP4, EMP4. So they are unique values only. Let me try to execute this. I'll say fetch. Done. Duration of 3 statement is what? So and so. Let me open the content of the table. Right click on this. Open content. Done. So I got what? 3 records. Okay. So successfully inserted. Now the change I'll do is you try to practice in the same sequence, then we will become strong in this sequel, because this sequel is the base for the rest of the concepts in ABAP HANA. Okay, done. Now the change I'll do is I'll try to insert duplicate value. Insert into gensoft EMP values. Employee number I'll say 1. Okay, and I'll try to say this is something what Kiran. So employee ID is what? Primary key constraint. Employee ID is a primary key constraint. So I'm trying to insert what? Duplicate value. When I say F8, good. What is the error I got? What is the error I got? Unique constraint violated. So as I told you, primary key is a collection of what? Unique constraint as well as what? Not null constraint. So this is giving me what? Error. What is the error I got? Unique constraint violated. So understanding this error is important. Am I clear? Just practicing is not important. If you get the errors only, will understand the what concept. Once again, let me save it. Done. Okay, now the change I'll do is, so I said that primary key the combination of both unique and what? Not null. Now I'll say insert into gensoft sql.emp4. I'll supply value only for what? Employee name. Employee name, I'll give the value as something what? Kiran. Okay, so what is the change I did here? I'm trying to provide value only for employee name. I'm not providing the value for what? Employee ID. Means indirectly we are trying to insert null value for what? Employee ID. So when I try to execute this, good. What is the error I got? Cannot insert null or update to what? Null. So you can observe, understand here. So primary key is the combination of what? Both unique and what? Not null. Okay, so this is again what error, because we are trying to provide what null value for that. Okay, any question so far? Please ask me.
Sridhar, so do we really get this kind of requirement in the real time? Like, because we have all SAP tables already built in, right? In HANA also.
Correct? Yeah. Now I need to develop some reports. Okay, I need to develop some reports which has to fetch the data from customer specific table. So if you forget about HANA, in a normal projects also, definitely we'll create some Z tables now. Okay, so in that Z tables you'll maintain the data. Okay, or you'll upload it from some XYZ place. Okay, then we'll what develop the reports on that. So here also, yes, very rarely, but again, why we should know, why we are, what we are trying to understand is we are trying to understand the syntax of these statements, because when you are executing the stored procedures functions, as part of that procedures and functions, we'll be using these statements. So as of now we are executing them independently, but in a stored procedure we'll keep all the statements what at a time.
Hmm. So basically, like in the real time, we will be,
Procedures.
utilizing these
Yeah.
standard tables while creating calculation,
No,
attributive
no.
and all those views, right?
In the yeah, in the standard tables also, on top of the standard tables, we are going to create the stored procedures. In that stored
Okay.
procedures, what we'll do, we'll write the SQL statements. What SQL statement? These things only.
Okay. These are like, yeah,
Yeah.
okay, basics. Yeah,
So
got it.
instead of
Understood.
our table, you might be using standard table. That's the only change.
Yes, Sridhar.
Yeah.
Hi,
Vamshi,
Sridhar.
hello.
Hi, Sridhar. I have two questions here.
Yeah, please.
One is how many normalization rules is going to be the data HANA database can allow us?
Okay. 12.
The second question I have, the
Yeah.
second one is, can we, this course is going to be cover how the row table is dynamically converted into a column table.
Yes. Yes. We'll discuss it. We can later point of time we can convert that row store table to what column store tables, provided if the data in the table is what consistent. So we'll have some consistent rules. If that is applicable, then we can convert.
Okay. What about the normalization rules, sir?
Yeah,
How
yeah.
many rules it can?
Yeah, yeah. I'll cover that point once I complete this native SQL, Pularo. Okay, because we need to
Okay.
discuss the theoretical concepts. So we'll discuss that.
Okay. Okay. Thanks.
Yeah. Sudhakar, please go. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I'll do that settings, Sudhakar. In the next class, I'll do it. Yeah. Yeah. Now it is okay, I think, Sudhakar. Fine. Vamshi, what is the doubt? Yeah, bulk data also we'll see, Vamshi, we'll see. We are trying to understand all the basics for the time being. Very basic. Right. So, what we are seeing two types of constraints: not null constraint and what primary key constraint. Not null constraint means what that particular column cannot contain null values. I meant to say blank values. Primary key constraint means what? It is a combination of both unique constraint and what not null constraint. Unique constraint means what? Which cannot accept duplicate values. Not null constraint means which cannot accept blank values. And one more thing we have understood is by default, if you don't specify whether it is row store or column store, okay, by default it is what row store table. Okay, and we also understood that whether it is row store or column table, I can create the table without any constraints, without any not null, unique or what primary key constraint. You can see the differentiation here in the tables here. EMP1 is row store, so you can see the icon is showing in row format. Okay, if you see this EMP2, EMP3 and EMP4, it is column store tables. So we are seeing the icon in what column wise. Done. Now, yeah, so we understood about how to create the table and how to what? Uh, what? Insert the data into the table. So let me take EMP4 first. Let me refresh. Done. So I got the data. Now what I'll do is I want to create one more table. Okay, I want to create one more table based on what? Based on other table. So what I'll do is, yeah. So here I'll say, one second. Did I document it here? Done. Okay. So here I'll say create column table. I'll say gensoft SQL dot emp4 is over emp5. I'll say emp5. Okay, like, okay, like what I'll say here, like gensoft SQL dot what emp4. I'll say, yeah, okay, emp4. Then I'll say with data. So what is the change I did here? Earlier I created the table from the scratch, means while creating the table itself I am giving the columns one by one. Now what I am doing, I am trying to create the table by using what? Like operator. What is that? I said create column table gensoft SQL dot emp5 like what? Gensoft SQL dot emp4. I said what? With data. Okay, with the data. Okay, or else I'll say emp3 first. emp3, then I'll say create column table gensoft sql.emp6 like emp4 emp4, and I'll say with no data. So what is the change I did here? One table is emp5 I'm trying to create, another table is what? emp6. emp5 is created based on what? emp3 I said with data. emp6 I'm creating without what? No data. So before I execute them, let me open emp3 first. I click on this, I'll say open content. emp3, does it have data? Yes, we are having the data. Done. Then what else? I click on the emp4, I'll say open content. Yes, emp4 is also having what? Data. So let's see whether these two tables are created or not. So emp5 is what? With data. emp6 is what? Without data. Okay, done. I'll say what? F8. Done. So you can see now the one table is what? emp5, it is created with data. Another table is what? emp6 without data. Let me go and check. I'll right click on this and I'll say refresh. We have two tables, emp5 and emp6. Let me open emp5. Right click on this, I'll say open content. Done. The data is available. I'll right click on the emp6, I'll say open content. I don't have the data. Understood? So I can create the table based on what? Like operator. So when you do that, I can create it with data or what? Without data. Now one more change. What I'll do is I'll create another table. Create column table emp7. emp7. Okay. Like emp3 or emp4, I'll say. I will not use any addition. I will not use any addition like with data or what? Without data. So what I'm trying to understand, whether it is by default with data or without data. So before that, let me open emp4 first. emp4 is already having the data. Some three records are there. Now I'm trying to create another table emp7 based on emp4. So let me execute this. F8. Done. What happened? The table got created. So if I refresh this, done, it is refreshed. Now I'll right click on the emp7, I'll say open content. What happened here? It has created the table but without any data. So if you don't use that addition, it is what? Without data. So what is the default thing here? No data. Default thing is no data. Okay. Similarly, I'll do one more thing. This is by using what like operator. Now I'll say, or let me take EMP4 only first. I click on the table, open content. Yes, we are having the data. Done. Now create column table gensoft sql dot emp emp8. I'll say emp8. Okay, emp8 emp8 as what, as select star from, as select star from what, gensoft sql dot what, emp4. Okay, gensoft emp4. So when I'm using the like operator, try to understand this. When I'm using the like operator, and if you don't use the addition with the data or without data, with no data, by default it is what, with no data. Now I'm trying to create the table based on subquery. Okay, this is called as creating the table with what, subquery. Okay, so what I'm doing is I'm trying to create emp8 as select star from what, gensoft sql dot emp4. Let me execute this. I'll say F8. Done. It has executed EMP8. Done. Let me refresh and check whether the data is created or not. Refresh. Table is created. Let me open the content. What happened? So by default it is what? So if you are creating it based on subquery, data also will be what? Created with the data. Okay. So this is creating the table based on what, subquery. So it is created with data. Now I'll say, let me create another table. Create column table, whatever it is. Okay, emp9 I'll say, emp9 as select star from what, so and so, same I'll say with no data, with no data. So what is the change I'm using here? I'm using what, yeah, with no data. So let me just execute this. F8. Done. It has created. Okay, let me refresh and check once again. Let me copy this first. So what is that I'm doing here? With the data, this will be created with data. Done. Let me open that. I'll refresh. Done. Open content. So what happened here? The table is created but without any data. Understood? So in case of like operator, it is by default without data. In case of subquery, it is by default what, with data. Okay, now one more thing. Okay, if you see the structure of this emp4, right click on that, open definition. How many columns it has? Got two columns, emp id and what, emp name. Okay, so keep that in mind. Now I'll say create column table gensoft emp10 as select, I star indicates what, all the fields. I don't want all the fields, so I'll say what, emp id from what, so and so. Let me remove this. Okay, so what I'm doing here, I'm just trying to create the what, table. Okay, I'm trying to create the table with only what, one column. Okay, so let me open, execute this. F8. Done. It is executed. Refresh and check. emp10. Open the definition. Yes, my table is created with only one column, emp id. Let me open the data. Right click on the emp10, open content. What happened? By default, since I created with a subquery, only the data is what, by default data also will be copied. So I can create the table what, based on like operator, based on what, subquery. And in that also you have to decide, whether it is what, with a few fields or with what, all the fields. Understood? So here also it is created with data but with only one column, what, emp id. Any questions on this? Any questions?
Sridhar, one question.
Yeah, Praveen.
So when we create all these, tables, custom tables, um, so is it like, are they also going to be shared with the BW reports, or like is it only for the consuming in the
No, no,
non-HANA system?
no. It can be accessed from anywhere, anywhere.
Okay. Because in a later point of time you'll be creating CDS views, right? So
Correct.
that is on the
Through
like
application
here
server.
we have, yeah, no,
Hmm.
here you are creating all these in the HANA database, and
Correct.
later you'll be going to SAP. There you'll be creating a CDS views, which is non HANA, right?
No, 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 no. CDS views also has to be created from HANA Studio only. Has to be to HANA Studio. Whenever we activate that CDS view in the database level, that is in the HANA database only, it will create one SQL view.
But you'll be creating on the ABAP perspective, right, Sridhar? But that will be related to the same SAP, right?
Yeah, CDS views or ABAP perspective. Now what I am doing is this is native SQL. These objects are what? These objects are what? Global. What are the database objects?
Yes,
Yeah,
whatever you're creating, you're connected to the HANA database, and you're creating, and this will be stored in HANA database. But
correct.
only my query is like, when you are going to the next level, like creating a CDS views,
Mhm.
those are like you will be connecting to ABAP perspective, and which will be directly, you are working with the SAP side, right? You will not be connecting to HANA database, right?
No, no, no. Okay, we'll not connect to the database. Fine, absolutely fine. We'll do it through applications only, but the moment you activate, one
Uh-huh.
object gets stored in the database only. What are the
Which
CDS?
database? Because you're not connected to HANA, right? You will be
Correct.
still connected to MS SQL or Oracle, right?
That is the concept of what? CDS. That is the concept of CDS. It will go and sit in the HANA database only. Okay.
Okay, when you are retrieving the CDS data from the non-HANA database, it goes and brings the data from the backend HANA data.
Yes, yes. Why not? See, that's what I have shown in the last class. No, 1 second. Yeah, you can see now. Here, what I said here, you'll create this at the end. What happens? It will create the SQL view where in the HANA database only. This is CDS view, HANA database.
Uh-huh.
We cannot directly create the CDS view directly in the database. We have to follow this procedure. The moment you activate, it generates one SQL view in the HANA database. This
But
can,
at
yeah.
that time, we are not connected to HANA database, right?
No,
See, that's my
yeah,
query.
yeah, we
Yeah.
are not directly connected to HANA database. Whatever the database configured here, in that database it creates. Okay, what you are saying is, if it is Oracle, it will create there, yes. But generally, no, we'll create this CDS view in perspective to what? HANA only. Whatever the underlying database is there, one view will be created.
Yeah, that's what my assumption, like, because when we are working at a web perspective which is connected to non-HANA database like Oracle and all that, so we are still away from the HANA database, right? So I was just trying to understand how that replica will be created in the backend. Yeah.
Yeah, it can be any database, Praveen. That's what you said is fine.
Okay.
What is the other doubt? Others, 1 second. How to append new field? Yeah, Venkat. Anyhow, that we'll discuss in the coming classes. So, as I told you here, we have what? Alter. By using alter statement, okay, by using alter statement, we can add additional what? Columns. We can modify the constraints, all those things. So, as of now, we created the what table by using create statement. Tomorrow onwards, I'll cover this alter. So the answer for your question is what? Alter. By using alter statement, we can add a new field to the table. We can drop a field. We can what? Add a new constraint, or we can modify the constraint. All those things by using alter statement. I think I hope it's clear. Yeah. Okay. So tomorrow what we'll do is today we understood only about the what create and what insert. Tomorrow we'll see foreign key relationship, and then I'll go to what this alter, drop, and what rename. Okay, so the next 4 5 days we'll be understanding this thing, so that when we go to the actual development process, again we should not think about the purpose of this statement, what is constraint, where to check the constraint, what is the difference between different types of constraints, how to identify the system defined constraints, how to identify user defined constraints. All those things we'll be discussing the next 3 4 days. After that we'll be going for the what programming part. So we are trying to understand the syntaxes first. Okay, so I'll stop for today. We'll continue tomorrow with what foreign key and this alter, drop, and what rename. Okay, so I'll share this in detail. You can just practice this one.
This SQL script is any specific keywords for only for HANA, or
Yes.
is same like?
No, no. See this column keyword. This is specific for HANA only, na. I cannot use it in a normal open SQL. So it is specific to HANA only. It is
Okay.
native SQL. Native SQL means what? Which will directly talk with what? HANA database. Yes, these keywords are specific to what? HANA database only. I cannot use this
But
in my normal ABAP OpenSQL. These are advanced OpenSQL which are specific to what? HANA database.
okay, but I'm talking about more or like this SQL script is common for all the SQL platforms. Is it
Yeah,
right?
yeah. The base statement would be same. The base statement would be same. The base statement
Okay.
create, alter, drop. This would be same, but the additions like column with the data, with
Yeah.
no data,
With
those are
the
specific. Yeah, those are specific.
yeah. Okay. Thanks.
Yeah. Done. So I'll share this, and I'll also share the vendor details where you can get this server. Okay, so you can contact them directly and you can start practicing according to your convenience. Done. So I'm winding off for today.